Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this info session for the new EUROCLUSTER call. This is the second generation of the so-called EUROCLUSTERs. My name is Valentino Izzo. I'm Program Coordination Manager at EISMEA, and I will be your moderator today. Before starting, I would like to remind you some housekeeping rules that you will see on the screen. Okay, your microphone and camera are switched off by default. This info session is recorded and you will find the slides and the recording on EISMEA webpage. You will receive information about that. And I also remind you that at the end of the session, you will see a screen that will pop up automatically to answer a survey, because we value very much your feedback. The objective of today's session is to inform you about the terms of the call, the conditions, the background, the policy context. But the objective is also and mainly to have you ask your questions, pose your questions, and clarify all doubts you might have. So let's see how you can do this. There is a Slido QR code here on the slide. You can connect via your laptop or mobile. You can also connect via slido.com and use the appropriate hashtag. You will be able to pose any questions. We will not filter. You will have the possibility to vote them, and we will try to answer as many questions as possible. In any case, if for any reason like lack of time, or if in case we are not able to give an immediate answer, all frequently asked questions will be answered following this info session on the funding and tender portal. Let's see now a bit the agenda of the day. We will start with a welcome session where DG GROW and EISMEA will set a bit the scene and give put this call into the right context. Then we will dive into the call with DG GROW first explaining the policy context, the scope, eligible activities, and then we will have a presentation on the administrative and financial provisions of the call, followed by the rules for and process for validation of participants in the participant register. After each of these sessions, we will have a Q&A session that is specifically dedicated to the previous presentation and speaker. And at the end as well of the morning, we will have a general Q&A session where all remained unanswered questions will be answered, and where you will also be able to pose any further comments on any of the previous presentation. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the next speakers. And I would like to give the floor to Mariella Masseling, Head of the Industrial Forum Alliances Clusters Unit in DG GROW. Mariella, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Many thanks, Valentino. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you all from my side as well. For those of you who do not know me yet, my name is Mariella Masseling, and I'm a Head of Unit for Industrial Forum Alliances and Clusters in DG GROW. That's the Directorate-General for Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship and SMEs of the European Commission. My unit is in charge of European support schemes for SMEs, and that also includes all the activities and initiatives around clusters. In my welcome speech today, I'm going to explain you a little bit the policy context of the call. So what are we trying to achieve with this initiative? Looking back a bit, as many of you know, the EU has embarked on a major transformation towards a more sustainable, digital and resilient economy. We started this with the adoption of the Green Deal and our European Industrial Strategy in 2021, and also the Green Deal Industrial Plan. And most recently, we have built on this and adopted two very important acts, the Critical Raw Material Act and Net Zero Industry. These acts focus on strengthening and securing value chains of raw materials, reducing our dependencies, but also scaling up the manufacturing of clean technologies in the EU. We see these areas as fundamental to meet our climate objectives, but also to securing the resilience of our economies. Now, looking ahead, as you know, the Commission is currently in a moment of transition towards a new college. Hence, I will not be able to go into a lot of details of initiatives coming forward. But I think what is already clear, and this is what I wanted to mention you, is the policy framework in which we're operating. Prosperity is going to be a big focus point of this Commission. And when we in DG Grow talk about prosperity, in reality, we're talking about businesses because they're at the very heart of it all. Delivering on prosperity means essentially three things for us. First, it is about building a business case for decarbonization and a business case for transition towards new technologies and also addressing high energy prices. We have in this regard a clean industrial deal forthcoming. Second, the second element of delivering on prosperity is about a smooth investment journey for companies, accompanying them along the way, de-risking investments. And in this regard, we have an EU Competitiveness Fund proposal forthcoming next year. The third ingredient of prosperity is for us tapping into the full scale and potential of the single market. That's not just about getting the laws right, it is about implementation and enforcement. And that means that we need to remove barriers at every step of the way from legislation to implementation. We will work towards a new single market strategy in that regard. And as you might know, Executive Vice President designate Stéphane Séjourné has been tasked to lead on this important project. Now, how do clusters come into these policy priorities? Now we can say that clusters play a major role in helping us deliver on this promise of prosperity. They are really key players in the European industrial landscape because they connect economic actors all along the value chain, from research to industry, SMEs, and institutional actors. We see clusters as bridge builders, change agents, and multipliers. They are therefore not only important for our European prosperity, but also particularly critical for the development of our regions, including smart specialization. Now, the last point, how does the EUROCLUSTER call fit into this concept? Now, what we want to achieve with EUROCLUSTERs is that we want to create pan-European cluster networks, so clusters that work together across several member states, across regions, to create EU value chains. As you might know, it's actually the second call of this type, our second EUROCLUSTER call. With the first, we have set the foundation. We have supported 30 EUROCLUSTERs in 13 industrial ecosystems, and more than 1,300 SMEs have received financial support, and even many more have received other types of direct and indirect support. With EUROCLUSTERs, we see that we are creating jobs on the ground, and that is the basis that we want to build on. And at the same time, with the new call, we of course want to take into consideration this new policy landscape that I was talking about and the new challenges. Now, this means that with regard to the new call, we put a special emphasis also on these two acts that I have mentioned in the beginning, the Critical Raw Materials Act and the Net Zero Industry Act, because we think these are two strategic areas that we want to develop, particularly with regard to building EU value chains. And of course, EUROCLUSTERs also help us to strengthen our competitiveness. I think we have heard many times again, most recently in the Draghi report, that to strengthen our competitiveness, innovation is a key focus point. And in this regard, EUROCLUSTERs are extremely important because they will support companies and especially SMEs in business innovation. That means that they can help companies bring new or improved products and business processes to the market. Now, that is good for companies, obviously, but it will also help our EU become more resilient and competitive. My colleagues that are with me on the call today will go more into depth into all of this element, the policy context, but in particular, the technical and financial requirements of the call. And you will also have the possibility, as was said by Valentino in the beginning, to ask questions and clarifications regarding different aspects. We really strongly encourage you to, as many of you as possible, to apply. And with these words, I want to hand over to my colleague from the executive agency EISMEA, head of unit Natalia Martinez-Paramo, who is implementing the call with you on the ground. Many thanks for your attention, and over to you, Natalia.
Thank you very much, Mariela, and good morning to everyone. I'm really pleased, as Mariela said, to welcome you to the information session for the new Joint Cluster Initiative, or EUROCLUSTER call for proposal. Let me briefly, as Mariela also did it, introduce myself. My name is Natalia Martinez-Paramo, and I'm head of the unit SMP, SME Pillar, Internal Market and Support to Standardization at EISMEA. Is the executive agent, European Innovation Council, and Small and Medium-Sized Enterprise Executive Agency. I would like today briefly touch upon the following points. First, the SME pillar of the Single Market Program managed by my agency. Also, the role of EISMEA in supporting SMEs through clusters, with a focus on the, of course, joint cluster initiatives call for proposals, and to finalize with the new EUROCLUSTER call, improvement and development. Let's first start with the SME, Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises pillar of the Single Market Program. As you know, the SMP is a wide-reaching framework designed to help Europe's single market reach its full potential, especially as we work towards Europe's recovery. SME pillar, it has a budget of 1 billion euros, focus on supporting SMEs, which are the backbone of Europe's economy. And our aim is to create conditions that helps SMEs grow, innovate, and compete. And supporting cluster is a key way to achieve this. Through cluster, SME can come together, foster partnerships, and find new opportunities for growth. And through our work, we aim to strengthen cluster as collaborative, adaptable network that are ready to drive change in areas like sustainability, digitalization, and resilience. And the Joint Cluster Initiative, or EUROCLUSTER, is one of our flagship initiative in this sense. So you will hear, as Mariela already said in a few minutes, from now about the policy context behind this initiative, and also the rest of the sessions, all you need to know about this goal. And what is our role? What is the role of EISMEA supporting SMEs through clusters? So EISMEA supports SME through and with clusters. At EISMEA, we recognize clusters as crucial engines of regional development, knowledge sharing, and resilience. And this is why we have prioritized support for cluster initiatives, seeing them as collective platforms that can address economic challenges in a high, effective, and scalable way. And since 2014, we have made strong investment in cluster. For example, through COSME, our previous program, we promoted over 120 European strategic cluster partnerships involving more than 500 organizations across 29 countries. We also co-founded 25 clusters partnership under the Horizon 2020 program, as well as the first generation of EUROCLUSTERS. And finally, the 8 clusters partnership funded under the reason Agri-Food and EU-Ukrainian Cluster Co. And all together, this initiative represents a total investment of nearly 200 million. So with the second generation of EUROCLUSTER, we are committed to go one step further towards the creation of a strong community of clusters in Europe, while continue, of course, to build on this positive experience and on the lessons learned. And this is why today we are very pleased to present the new EUROCLUSTER call for proposals, designed with your feedback in mind. On several occasions, we had the opportunity to exchange with the ongoing EUROCLUSTER consortia and get feedback and suggestions on the implementation of their actions. We hear you, and we have done our best by making important adjustments to improve upon the previous goal. First, let me address the area of flexibility. During the implementation phase, on the first wave of EUROCLUSTER, we recognize the need to allow for a more tailored approach within each project design and implementation. So this time, we have carefully revised the call requirements to allow more adaptability. We believe that clusters, as close partners to SMEs, understand their needs best. With this goal, they are now empowered to design and implement projects that directly address those needs while, of course, fulfilling the call and policy objectives. Additionally, you might have noticed that we have increased the budget per project under this goal. We aim to fund around 16 projects and budget of 42 million euros. The maximum grant amount has increased to more than 2 million euros per project. So we believe this will enable future applicants to plan more ambitious activities and therefore achieve more tangible impact within and beyond their clusters network. The cascading grants that resulted being a very powerful tool able to channel important resources directly to European SMEs was kept, but also reinforced with a narrowed focus that will in turn be, we believe, key to greater impact. The first generation of EUROCLUSTER supported over 1,000 companies, and we believe, fingers crossed, the second generation will continue to be crucial for SMEs. We make up 99% of all businesses in the EU and employ more than 85 million people. These new EUROCLUSTERs will help SMEs transition to sustainable business model, digitalize processes, and adopt new technologies. Each project now has a higher ceiling, allowing consortia to design and implement a more consistent support for SMEs. With this budget increase, we hope, fingers crossed, to see impactful actions addressing both immediate challenges and long-term goals, as well as to grow a strong network of clusters across Europe. Over the last few years, we have seen the power of working together. And as the first EUROCLUSTERs come to an end, they have shown us how much we can achieve by sharing resources and ideas. So now we want to build on that progress. And our aim is to keep these connections growing, support new projects, and make the cluster community even stronger. By working closely together, we can create more opportunities and ensure a solid future for our industries and regions. So thanks for being part of these efforts. Let me conclude by saying that I'm sure that this info session will clarify many questions that you have about this call and provide a clear understanding of its objectives. We're impatient to see ambitious proposals that will come forward in response. So please remember once again that our role at EISMEA is to assist you through the proposal and implementation phases. So we look very much forward to working with you to make European SMEs stronger, greener, and more innovative than ever. So thank you very much. I wish you all an interesting and exciting info day, and good luck to all you applicants. Thank you very much, and I pass the floor to Valentino. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to Natalia and Mariella for these introductory words. And now we will then dive much more in depth into the call conditions, starting from the policy context, scope, eligible activities. And I see already Giovanni here ready, but just may only remind you once again that at the end of this intervention and the following ones. There will be a specific Q&A session. So I invite you to pose your questions on Slido, now focusing on the presentation of Giovanni first. Giovanni, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you, Valentino. So my name is Giovanni, and I work in the cluster unit of in the cluster team of the Industrial Forum Alliance and Clusters unit of DG GROW. And I would like, as Valentino said, go a bit more into depth into the policy context of this call, its background, and the scope. As you see in this table of content, I structured this presentation into sections. In the first one, I will talk about the policy context, what is the industrial policy of the EU, and I will stop on two acts, two initiatives of the Commission, the Critical Raw Material Act and the Net Zero Industry Act that you just heard from Mariella, because they will be the basis and they will be central for the future Commission priorities. I will also shortly discuss the importance of clusters for competitiveness and what is the role that they have clusters for policy implementation. And in the second part, I will go a bit more in depth into the Eurocluster call. You heard from Marielle and Natalia that this call is actually the second generation of the Eurocluster. The first one was published in 2021, project started in 2022. So I will make some reference to the first generation of Eurocluster. Next slide. Next, please. Okay, so in 2020, the Commission laid down the foundation for an industrial strategy that would support the twin transition, so the green and digital transition and transformation of our industry and economy, and make the EU industry more competitive globally and enhancing the Europe open strategic autonomy. Then, as you heard, as you remember, COVID came and many things changed. So there will be many things happened during the COVID and supply chain disruptions and all the crises connected. So the Commission reacted very fast and updated its industrial strategy in 2021. With the updated version, we want to strengthen even more the single market resilience. We want to analyze and address strategic dependencies that were the main issue during the COVID period. And we want to accelerate the twin transition, so the green and digital transition of our economy and of our industry. Overall, the industrial strategy wants to boost the clean tech production. The strategy also identified industrial ecosystems. It identifies 14 industrial ecosystems. And each industrial ecosystem encompasses all the players that are in a value chain, from the smallest startups to the biggest company, from academia to research, service providers, and suppliers. Next slide. The COVID-19 was not only a crisis that affected our economy in the recent period. Geopolitical tensions or other crises have increased volatilities and supply chain disruptions. And there are many geopolitical tensions at the moment. That's why the European Commission and the High Representative jointly published and adopted a European economic security strategy. This strategy is built upon three pillars. It wants to promote the competitiveness by boosting single market innovation and technological and industrial capacity. And I will focus on the innovation because, as you heard from Mariella before, this is a key aspect of the industrial policy of the Commission, and it will be a key aspect of the Eurocluster call as well. The economic security strategy also focuses on protecting the EU and giving protecting the economic security of the EU via a range of existing policies or new policies. And the strategy also wants to create reliable partnership with international partners that address the same or similar security concern, economic security concerns. Next slide, please. So we have the industrial strategy with the updated version of 2021. We have the economic security, but then I would spend a bit more time on the Green Deal industrial plan, because this is the core of our current industrial policy and will be the basis for the new clean industrial deal that will be adopted by the new Commission and the new College. The Green Industrial Plan is an initiative that comes from the Green Deal. It was the main priority from the previous college. The Green Deal Industrial Plan is built upon 4 pillars, and under the first pillar, there are 3 initiatives: the Critical Raw Material Act, the Net Zero Industry Act, and then an initiative about the EU electricity market, which is not part of this call, it's not relevant for the Eurocluster call, so I will not spend any time on that. But the Eurocluster call is very much focused on the Critical Raw Material Act and the Net Zero Industry Act. That's why I would like to spend the next time on this policy context on those 2 different acts. Next slide, please. The Critical Raw Material Act aims to ensure a secure and sustainable supply of critical raw materials in general. Raw materials and critical raw materials are needed for the green and digital transition. So you see how the critical raw materials, they fit into this the big scope of the industrial policy to transform our industry in a more green and digital ones. But they are also needed for defense and space and aerospace applications. Critical raw materials are important because will enhance our long-term competitiveness, and they would help to maintain our open strategic autonomy in this fast-changing geopolitical and challenging geopolitical environment. There are many tensions occurring at the moment. So you see how important it is to strengthen the EU capacity and the value chain along, related to the critical raw materials, because we need to increase resilience of those critical raw materials. We need to reduce dependencies of those raw materials. Just to give you a bit of figures, we are very much dependent for those materials, and there are projections that indicate that those raw materials, the need of those raw materials will increase in the future. For example, we are very much dependent of heavy or light rare earth elements, especially from China, from cobalt or lithium from Africa and South America. There are many regions in the world from which we are dependent. And this demand of raw materials is expected to increase by 12 times in 2030 compared to 2020, and by 21 times in 2050 compared to 2020. If we take as an example lithium, which is very much important for our batteries, for electric vehicles, for battery storage, for electricity storage. Next slide, please. So critical raw materials are fundamental for those strategic technologies that are instrumental for the green and digital transition, as well as for defense and space. And I would like to give you these terminologies of strategic technologies, because it's the same terminology that we then use, we have used in the call. The Critical Raw Material Act also divides the raw materials, let's say, in 2 different categories. Those that are defined critical raw materials, which are important for the whole European economy and face a high risk of supply disruption, and those that are called strategic raw materials, which are raw materials characterized by high strategic importance and projected a global supply-demand imbalance. And I would just like, because you will have later those slides, so I would like to highlight those terminologies, because they are the same terminologies that you will find in the call. Next slide, please. With the Net Zero Industry Act, which is the second initiative stemming from the Green Deal Industrial Plan, we aim to scale up the manufacturing of clean technologies and their component. The main components for those technologies. We want to create, with this act, a more simple and predictable legal framework for net zero industries. Net zero industry, they need to be part of European industry landscape, and they are part of the Green Deal Industrial Plan. Therefore, we want to improve the condition for investment in those net zero technologies, because those technologies, they will help to accelerate carbon capture and to reach the climate objective of the Commission. So we need to boost diversification of supply of net zero technologies, and we need to foster innovation. Once again, innovation. Innovation is a key aspect for the industry at the moment. Mariella said that has been highlighted by the Draghi report, and is actually the key element of this Eurocluster call. Next slide, please. The Act identifies a series of net zero technologies. They are in the heart. I just reported them here. We have solar photovoltaic and solar thermal, sustainable biogas or biomethane, heat pumps and geothermal energy, electrolyzers and fuel cells, batteries and storage, grid technologies, onshore wind and offshore renewables, and carbon capture and storage technologies. There are many others. They are listed in the Net Zero Industry Act. But when we refer to those net zero technologies, it's important to underline that we cover also the specific components that are primarily used for those specific technologies. And this is when we talk about net zero technologies in the EUROCLUSTERS, we also talk about those specific key components. Next slide, please. But before to talk about the EUROCLUSTER call and dig a little bit more into the call and what is the scope and the background, let me just spend a few minutes on the importance of clusters. Well, you all know that clusters are fundamental for the industry. They drive competitiveness and they help to introduce or to adopt industrial policies because they are on the ground. In the latest reports that we published on the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, the European Cluster Panorama, which there is a link in this slide, and I invite you to read because it can be useful when preparing your application. We analyze 24 different competitiveness indicators around 4 different dimensions, which are business environment, firm behavior, innovation potential, and economic returns. Once again, because this is not new, but once again, we demonstrated that clusters have a significant and positive correlation with those competitiveness indicators. Wherever we have clusters, we have a high employment rate. Wherever we have clusters, we have new enterprises coming into the market. Big regions with a huge cluster presence, they invest more in research and development. Just to give you an example, in Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg, south of Germany, where we have a huge cluster presence, it's a region that invested a lot massively in research and development. So clusters, presence of cluster equal innovation. In Catalonia, we have, which is another region where we have a huge cluster presence. Catalonia alone count for 1/3 of the European, of the Spanish European patent. So once again, cluster presence equal innovation. So clusters are generally linked to growth of regional GDP, to higher productivity, but they also help to build value chains, to strengthen those value chains. As I said, they are also useful to implement policy objectives. Clusters reinforce resilience and economic security, and has been demonstrated in the European Cluster Panorama, where we have a region with a strong cluster presence. That region is more ready for digital transformation and green transformation. So there is a link here. You find the European Cluster Panorama in the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, and I really invite you to read because it can be very useful when you will prepare your application. Next slide, please. Next, please. So here we come to the EUROCLUSTER call. As Natalia and Mariella already mentioned, this is the second generation of the EUROCLUSTER call. So before to talk about the EUROCLUSTER call of 2024, so the call that we are presenting today, I would like to spend a few moments in discussing what has been done in 2021, because the 2021 call is actually the base of the call that we are presenting today. As you heard, in 2021, we found 30 EUROCLUSTERs. 20 that were in specific industrial ecosystems, and 10 were across several industrial ecosystems. Back then, we were focusing very much on the industrial strategy, on the update version of the industrial strategy, and we want that EUROCLUSTERs were focusing on specific industrial ecosystems. We had a budget of 42 million euros, and 160 beneficiaries are jointly are the beneficiaries of the EUROCLUSTERs. Those beneficiaries are coming from 23 countries, 22 EU member states, and 13 out of the 14 industrial ecosystems are represented. Only the retail ecosystem is not represented by the current generation of the EUROCLUSTERs. As has been already mentioned, the particularity of this call is that there is a high share of budget that shall be redistributed to FSTP, to SMEs via an FSTP scheme, so a financial support to third parties. In May this year, we actually check how much money have been redistributed so far, because the EUROCLUSTERs, very few EUROCLUSTERs projects have finished, and some EUROCLUSTERs are still running. So the budget needs to be, again, more budget needs to be redistributed to SMEs. So we counted how much budget has been redistributed to EUROCLUSTER, and we found that about 22 million euros have been redistributed to SMEs, to about 1,300 SMEs. So once again, I would like to stress this, the magnitude of this number, because clusters are actually able to reach out SMEs and to promote specific activities on the ground, because clusters are connected with companies on the ground. Many more SMEs actually received indirect or other type of support from the EUROCLUSTERs, but 1,300 received financial support, and many more will get financial support. Next slide, please. Here we are of the EUROCLUSTERs of 2024, so the EUROCLUSTER of today. We have, you already heard that we have the same budget. We have 42 million euros to fund the EUROCLUSTER project, but we expect to fund about half of the EUROCLUSTERs that have been funded in 2021. So we expect to fund 16 EUROCLUSTERs. This means that each project will have around 2.6 million, a bit more than 2.6 million euros actually. This time we don't focus anymore on the industrial ecosystems, but we focus on supporting value chains and supporting value chains linked to the Commission priorities of the Green Deal Industrial Plan, so the Critical Raw Material Act and the Net Zero Industry Act, and other value chains. I will explain that later in the next slide. We also, this time we also focus on one main objective. Before we were focusing on many objectives, this time we really focus and target the EUROCLUSTERs to one single objective, which is innovation and adoption of new processes and technologies. And when we refer to innovation in the call, we refer to the definition of innovation that you have in the Oslo manual, which is a new to firm or significantly improved good or service or business process that has been introduced on the market or that has been brought into use by the firm. Once again, the EUROCLUSTER has a high share of the budget that shall be redistributed to SMEs. This is the same share as before, 75%. This time we want to focus this amount of money for activities, to support activities that are directly focused to address the main objective, so the innovation aspect. Moreover, we included in the call the condition that beneficiaries of FSTP, they need to finance their projects with other private financial sources. Next slide, please. Now, the two strands. As I said, we want to focus on value chains. On the first strand, we want to focus on value chains that are directly linked to the Net Zero Industry Act and the Critical Raw Material Act. We aim to have at least 8 projects in this strand. In particular, we want to cover value chain within or across industrial ecosystem, aiming at ensuring access to secure and sustainable supply of net zero technologies, or covering value chains within or across industrial ecosystems, aiming at starting or expanding the extraction, processing, or recycling of strategic raw materials or materials that can substitute strategic raw materials in strategic technologies. You see that this terminology is coming back again. So we want to focus really on those Commission priorities because will be the basis of the next Commission initiatives. At the same time, we also want to open the EUROCLUSTERS to all value chains. That's why we have a second strand where we include value chains which are not covered in strand 1. So any value chain is included, which is not covered in strand 1, of course, is included in strand 2. In the call, we also have a condition or a disclaimer where we say that if there are no sufficient proposals passing the overall or individual threshold of the award criteria in any of the two strands, the budget available will then be used to support the proposal in the other strands. So we can really switch the budget and finance project in strand 1 or strand 2. Next slide, please. About the objective. I mentioned before that we have one main objective, which is linked to innovation. Again, innovation, see the definition of the innovation in the Oslo Manual. By the way, there is the link of the Oslo Manual in this presentation for your reference. In fact, this is the main focus of the EUROCLUSTERS, but we have also other objectives. There is one horizontal objective, which is communication, because we want that EUROCLUSTER are able to communicate their work effectively to stakeholders. We want that EUROCLUSTERs are able to reach out to SMEs, and we want that EUROCLUSTER are able to show what is the outcome of the project. And of course, this communication objective, it's also a mandatory objective. At the same time, we have what we called in the call secondary supporting objectives. And those are linked to networking, training, and internationalization. We will see the objective in the next slide. But as it's stated in the call, application shall address the main objective, so the innovation aspects, but are also expected to contribute to one or more of those strategic, supporting objectives. Next slide. If you look at the main objective, this is about reducing dependencies of companies in the ecosystems on critical inputs and critical technologies. This goes together with identifying innovation potential and undertaking innovation activities supporting companies and in particular SMEs in business innovation. And we also want that EUROCLUSTER cooperate effectively with other local and other actors in designing and implementing projects that are funded under different programs. Horizon Europe, for instance, or smart specialization strategies, or any other program. We also want that EUROCLUSTERs have to adopt processes and technologies that improve value chain efficiencies, that accelerate and succeed in the green and digital transition of our EU industries and SMEs. We want that they help business in adopting advanced technologies and in fostering strategic collaboration between tech-savvy companies and traditional businesses. Next slide. At the same time, the aim of those secondary supporting objective is, the overall aim is to reinforce the main objective. As I say, they are linked to networking, training, and internationalization. For the first one, networking is about strengthening the value chain through the integration of different actors, competencies, and solutions. And this can be done by creating strong results-oriented networks, long-term partnership, and by cooperating effectively with other networks, such as, for instance, the EEN. The training is about sharing experience in analyzing, designing, and delivering a common strategy and/or on implementing a roadmap on green and digital skills. And this can be done by developing a portfolio of services and implementing collaboration actions, facilitating upskilling and reskillings of the workforce, or enhancing skill-related services. And then we have the internationalization objective, which is about reaching collaboration agreement with entities in third countries, leading to market access for EU companies in those third countries. And this can be done by developing and implementing an internationalization strategy or a joint European strategy, for instance, with a global, that has a global perspective, by supporting internationalization of SME towards specific countries and help SMEs benefiting from trade agreements that are in place with those third countries or that will be in place in the future with those third countries. This is in a nutshell the aim of the supporting objective. As I say, those are not mandatory. The mandatory objective is the innovation objective, and the application shall address those secondary objectives in order to one or more in order to contribute the main objective. Next slide. Okay, because there is one mandatory objective, we also have in the call a set of mandatory activities, actually two mandatory activities that are linked to the mandatory objective. Because the communication is also, let's say, it's an horizontal objective, but it's also mandatory for the call, we also have mandatory activities, or one mandatory activity for communication. We do not have in the call mandatory activities for the secondary supporting objectives. Now, the code says that the applicants need to follow as a minimum those mandatory activities. But then we expect that the applicant set a coherent set of activities for the main objective, for the communication, and eventually for the secondary supporting objective that will be target, that of course include those mandatory activities. For the main objective, the two mandatory activities are support product innovation to reduce dependencies on critical input and technologies in the EUROCLUSTER value chains, with a view to introducing new to firm product or services, and to foster the implementation of business process innovation tied to the adoption of new to firm technologies that help SMEs to meet the requirement of their successful green and digital transitions, as well as to increase their resilience. Two mandatory activities, we have two mandatory deliverables. So again, we expect the EUROCLUSTER propose a set of activities for the mandatory objectives and a set of deliverables linked to the mandatory objectives. But those two, they need to be included. For the communication, we have one mandatory activity that is about communicating the results of the EUROCLUSTER. As I said, we want that EUROCLUSTER are able to reach out SMEs, to communicate about their work, to communicate and show the results of the EUROCLUSTER projects. There is a mandatory deliverable, and again, this is a minimum that we expect. We do not have mandatory activities for the secondary supporting objective because they are not mandatory. But in the call, you will see a set of activities, potential activities, and this is a non-exhaustive list. And this is the list is just there for you to take inspiration. And those activities include main objective, communication, secondary objective, and it's up to you to follow one of those activities or other activities that are not included in this list. This is totally open to you. Next slide. Next to the activities, we also have key performance indicators, because we want that EUROCLUSTERs monitor the results of their activities. To do that, they need to have a comprehensive set of indicators and benchmark and targets. Once again, in the call, we list a set of KPIs. My colleague Arianna in the next presentation will spell them out and will explain a bit more on those, give a bit more explanation in those KPIs. Here, I would just like to focus on this message. We have KPIs linked to the mandatory objective. Those are mandatory KPIs. So we expect that EUROCLUSTERs target those KPIs plus other KPIs that are linked to other activities that are to be included in the application. Then we have the so-called horizontal KPIs that are not specific to a single objective of the call. And then we have the KPIs linked to secondary objective. Of course, if the EUROCLUSTER will not target a particular secondary objective, training, internationalization, or networking, the KPIs linked to those objectives are, of course, they not need to be included in the project, because the EUROCLUSTER will not target the objective, so there are no activities linked to it. Therefore, there is nothing to monitor. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is my last slide of the presentation, and I would just like to give you visually an overview of the two EUROCluster call. If you already participated in the EUROCluster call 2021, you see here what are the differences. If you did not participate in the EUROCluster call of 2021, you can actually go on the European Cluster Collaboration Platform on the funding and tender portals and see what are the projects that we found back then. So it can be maybe useful for you to take some kind of inspiration. Anyway, the differences are here. We have the same budget, but we have this time less projects. 16 projects are expected, which means that we have a higher budget for projects. We don't focus anymore on industrial ecosystems, but on value chain. One strand, that's why we have 2 strands compared to 15. The 15 strands, they are coming from the 14 ecosystems plus the open strand, but let's focus on this year call. So we have 2 strands focused on value chains. One strand is focused on Critical Raw Material Act, Net Zero Industry Act policy priorities. And then we have the second value chain that is open to any other value chain that is not included in the Critical Raw Material Act and Net Zero Industry Act value chains. We have only one mandatory objective plus three secondary supporting objective. It's up to the EUROCluster consortia to set up the project as they wish, but the only one, the innovation is mandatory. Communication is also mandatory. And again, we expect that EUROClusters are able to tackle also one or more of those secondary supporting objectives. The share of the FSTP does not change, which means that overall for the call, we have the same amount of money that shall be redistributed to SMEs, but because the grant amount is higher per project, there is also a higher amount per project that shall be redistributed to SMEs. Also, the maximum grant amount per funded entity does not change because it's 60,000 euros, and this is a limitation that we have from the financial regulation. We introduced at this time 2 conditions. The first one is that the 75% of the budget, so the FSTP calls, are only reserved to activities that are directly focused to address the mandatory objective, so the innovation aspect. And as a second condition, that beneficiaries that participate with the project funded with FSTP, with the FSTP calls, they shall participate by introducing to the project other private financial sources. And with this, I finished. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm here to take any question if you have. Otherwise, also later when we have the general Q&A session. Back to you, Valentino. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Giovanni, for this comprehensive presentation of the course objective, scope, eligible activities, key characteristics. I see there are already several questions on Slido. Please keep posing your questions on this specific presentation, and we have about 15 minutes for these questions now, for this first round of questions. So I will read them loud. So for Strand 1, shall project focus both on net zero technologies and critical raw technologies, or can we focus only one subject, net zero technology or critical raw materials? In the latter case, can we focus only on one or few net zero technologies? Giovanni, I think this is for you.
Yes, thanks. Thanks, Valentino. Yes, so it's or. So I can focus on critical raw materials or on net zero technologies, and in the latter case, we can focus only on one or few of net zero technologies. You do not need to target all the technologies that are in the Net Zero Industry Act.
Thank you. So we go to the next one. Is there any minimum limit percentage for the required private co-funding to be provided by FSTPs?
No, there is no minimum limit for percentage for the required private co-funding. The call simply say that the third parties must match. Well, the financial support must be matched by third parties with a certain percentage of other private financial sources. So there is no minimum for that.
Thanks. Yes. So there is no requirement in the call. Obviously, you will need to justify the approach you will choose, and this will be also evaluated. Please refer also to the work criteria that where the approach on FSTP will be evaluated. So the next question is, how will SME manage to adopt technologies to improve resilience and implement digital green transition if they cannot use EUROCLUSTER grant to purchase and install these technologies? Maybe this is more for us, Giovanni. I don't know if I can attempt the answer. This is not correct. The call document, page 18, refers to non-eligible activities. The non-eligible activities are activities of our beneficiaries of the grant, that will not be eligible. It means that if you apply as a beneficiary, as consortium member, among the activities you will perform, you will not be able to purchase and install technologies. But this does not refer to the third parties, and you can design the call as you wish, provided you obviously need to justify and argument the approach you've chosen and why you've chosen that approach. So the code design, the cascading code design is up to you. And we move to the next one. Is the at least 8 means the first three will be granted all above threshold projects in Strand 1 before granting any Strand 2 proposal. I think I will also take this one, Giovanni. If I understand the question well, this is more about evaluation process, and no, there is no first grants and second round of grants. So this is all evaluated together. There are two separate ranking lists, but the decision will be made jointly by the evaluation committee. There is only the restriction that at least 8 have to be granted under Strand 1, and actually there is also in the call, there is an indication that for some I mean, there might be reasons for which EISMEA decides to, the evaluation committee, sorry, decides to grant different numbers of proposals. So there is a certain flexibility, but the aim is to grant at least 8 under Strand 1. Obviously, John, if you feel free to add anything if you wish. Now, if we move to the next question, what is meant with private match funding in context of financial support for beneficiaries? Is the FSTP not anymore 100% provided as in current EUROCLUSTER? And again, not sure this question is really for this specific presentation, but I would say that these are two different things. The co-funding rate for the category FSTP is still 100%. So we will reimburse 100% of the cost beneficiaries will incur. It is that the beneficiary themselves, they will have to ensure there is a certain funding, the certain percentage of resources provided by the third parties. These are two different things. I'm not sure if I was complete, but otherwise maybe we can also clarify this further with our financial colleagues later on. Can you explain a little bit beneficiaries shall participate with other private financial sources? I don't know if, Giovanni, you want to explain the ratio of this choice?
Okay. Yes, no, because in fact the rationale for this choice, we want to commit SMEs in innovation. So this is about innovation. So how to commit? We want that SMEs are actually participating with their own projects. So that's the reason. As we said before, there is no minimum, but we want that beneficiaries of FSTP participate with their own other private financial sources to the project.
Thank you. Then can you please elaborate which types of value chains that would be relevant for Strand 2? Should they still be aligned with industrial ecosystems?
Yes, so what value chains would be relevant for Strand 2? Any value chain which is not included in Strand 1. And about alignment with industrial ecosystems, in the application, you have also to indicate the industrial ecosystems. So it's in the application form prepared by EISMEA. So yes, this is up to the application. You can be aligned with one industrial ecosystem, with more industrial ecosystems. This is up to the consortia, to the application. I hope it's clear.
Thanks. In addition to the main objective, the mandatory one or more of the supporting objectives must be integrated. Recommended to have all?
No, we don't give any recommendation here. This is, you need to prepare your proposal and need to be coherent. The proposal then will be evaluated, and that's it. So the supporting objectives, as I say, they are there to support the main objective, and then it's up to you how you want to structure your proposal.
Yeah, and I would say that it's up to you to demonstrate that your approach is the best, the most suited one, is coherent, and this will be evaluated again based on the work criteria, section 9. So we move to the next one. Is it possible for one entity to apply to both strands within two different proposals? Not from one entity, because there is a there is I'm looking for the page, sorry, a non-concurrent rule in the eligibility section. Yes, so at page 27, non-concurrent submission and non-concurrent participation. So please refer to that section 6 in the call. Individual applicants, both beneficiaries and affiliated entities, cannot participate in more than one EUROCLUSTER proposal under this call. So otherwise, if they do, there are cases of same applicant in different proposals, we reserve the right to exclude those proposals. So we go to the next. The call seems to target only cross-sectoral partnerships. Does a single ecosystem integrating different texts from others or addressing different ecosystem? Okay. Giovanni.
It's good. I'm not sure I fully understand the call. The question, sorry.
Yeah. The call seems to target only cross-sectoral part. I don't know why they say so. I don't recall in the call text to have any indication of the cross-sectorial approach as a requirement, at least. So there are two strands that focus on different value chains. And I would say that there is no, but we can go back. We can come back in writing on this. I don't know if the person who posed the question could further clarify. We might come back. Okay, if a proposal has a focus on both critical raw materials, but also on other value chains, should we position ourselves under strand 1 or 2?
This is up to you to decide where you want to position yourself. Of course, if you position yourself under strand 1, you will create your application focusing on strand 1, and if you position more on strand 2, you will focus on different value chain, and then you will mention that also there are critical raw materials. It's up to you, and it has to be coherent with the proposal. You cannot focus on strand 1 if you then in your application you don't really focus on critical raw materials and the other way around. So you decide.
Thanks. So how are secondary objectives expected to be financed? Can budget from EUROCLUSTER be used? Or is it the clusters who finance it from their own funding resources? Can budget from the EUROCLUSTER be used? Well, obviously, I mean, if there are activities addressing the secondary objectives that are part of the grant agreement, they will be funded with the budget of the project. I'm not sure what you mean, but from their own funding resources, I mean, in any case, the project activities have to be co-funded. So there is a co-funding rate that is 90% for all categories except financial support to third parties. Moreover, I don't know if my answer is clear, but I struggle a bit with the question. Maybe also it's useful to say that certain activities that contribute to that are addressing secondary objective, but also contribute to the mandatory one, can also be funded with the cascading calls. So there are different ways of funding them, and so again, if I didn't get the question correctly, please submit maybe a clarification or another question. So we move to the next. Will projects related to the cybersecurity value chain also be considered in this call, especially considering critical infrastructure?
Yeah, this is another value chain that is not linked to the strand 1. It's not critical raw materials from the Zero Industry Act, but it can be included also. But it's good focus in the scope of the EUROCLUSTERs in promoting digital transformation, for instance, or more resilience of the company. So yeah.
Okay, is the secondary activity on training dedicated to clusters personnel only, or are they open to SME?
I would say they are for SMEs. Valentino, you want to say something on that, maybe?
No, nothing to add. So could you please explain what do you mean by value chain eligible for strand 1?
Yeah, so all value chains that fall into this critical raw materials and Net Zero Industry Act. We think about value chains linked to key technological components of net zero technologies or net zero technology themselves or critical raw materials, substitute materials that can be used in strategic technologies. Strategic technologies are those that make use of strategic raw materials and that are important for green transformation, digital transformation, space and aerospace application and defense. Other way to extract materials. So all value chains linked to the raw materials in general and the net zero industry technologies, including the key components that are primarily used for those net zero technologies. I hope it's clear.
Thanks. And I remind you that in the call at page 11 on strand 1, there are also references in the footnotes to the relevant regulation of the EU. So please have a look and you will certainly have a clear picture of the value chains involved. Now, will SMEs have to match 100% of the EU funding they received with private resources? No. What do they mean match 100%? That there is a co-funding of 50%? No, there is no indication in the call. It's up to you to decide, as we said before. Then funding rate for clusters is 90%, with beneficiaries shall participate with other private private financial sources. You mean the remaining 10%? No, or something else. No, maybe this is more a question for the financial colleagues, but unless I'm mistaken, maybe I give the floor to Alain.
Hello, everybody. I'm financial officer here at EISMEA. Just to reply to this question, in fact, when we talk about 90%, this is the co-funding rate for all the cost category except the financial support to third party. So this private financial source contribution has nothing to do with this 90%. What you have to understand is that from one part we will co-fund 90% of all cost category except the FSTP, and for the FSTP we will finance 100%. We will finance 100%. So there is no here question about 10%, 90%. The co-finance, the private financial sources will have to be determined at the level of the SME according to what they will be able to bring to the call and to the project. But voilà, this has nothing to do with the 90%, which is generally designated for the other cost category like personal costs, subcontracting, and other direct costs, but not. This has nothing to do with the FSTP.
Thanks, Alain. And I hope it is clearer now. I also want to stress what we said before. We will reimburse 100% of the financial support to third parties, but 100% is the cost that the beneficiary will incur. So it doesn't mean that so the co-funding of the SME is not obviously in this I mean, is not relevant here. Now, is the secondary activity on training dedicated to clusters? No, this we already answered, I think. Is it okay if the companies provide matching funding in the form of some of their personnel already working in the company to deal with the new project? Is it okay if the companies? I'm not sure if I think we are talking here of companies. You mean not you mean the SMEs, the third parties benefiting from a cascading call, but I'm not fully sure. So basically, I think you're asking if they could provide their resources with personal costs. This is I don't see problems, but this is not up to us. It's up to the beneficiaries to design the call, to design the eligible activities, and what they will wish to, what kind of cost they will wish to cover. And yes, I think we are late on. We are late on our agenda, and maybe we should move to the next presentation. We will answer all the remaining questions at the end. So nothing will remain unanswered. Be sure, but we will answer them later on at the end of the morning. So let me give the floor to the next speaker, Arianna Della Ca. She's the call coordinator, and she will present us a bit the administrative aspects and requirements of the call. Arianna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Valentino, and good morning, everyone. Yes, my name is Arianna Della Ca, and I work as a project advisor and also call coordinator at EISMEA, which, as you know, is responsible for managing this call. My presentation will give you some more information about this call, mostly from an administrative point of view. Yes, so let's start by the call title. As you know, of course, all the presentations, including this one, will be available after the event on the EISMEA website. So you will also be able to access all these links that you will see now on my slides directly. The title of the call is Joint Clusters Initiatives for Europe's Recovery, EUROCLUSTERS, and as explained by Giovanni already, that call is composed of two strands. First one focusing on the Net Zero Act and the Critical Raw Materials Act, the second one on all other value chains. The call budget is 42 million euros, and since we expect to finance 16 projects, of which at least 8 on the Strand 1. This means that the maximum grant amount roughly corresponds to 2,625,000 euro per project. Also, we expect that the duration of the project will be between 30 and 36 months. And this means that the maximum project duration is normally 36 months, but as also stated in the call document, extensions beyond this duration can be considered only if justified and through an amendment to the grant agreement. Next slide, please. Yes, about the call timeline, indicative call timeline. As you know, this call was published on the 15th of October, and the deadline to submit your proposals is the 5th of February at 5 p.m. Central European Time. Please be mindful of this deadline, because if you submit your proposal after this time, even 1 minute later, as you know, we cannot consider it as eligible for the competition. So please try to submit as soon as possible once you have completed your application. Then, after the call deadline, we will immediately start the evaluation process, which is expected to last until May, June 2025. Then we will inform all the applicants about the outcome of the evaluation through the evaluation results letters. And then with the applicants that are successful, they will be invited immediately to start the preparation of the grant agreement. And our intention is that all projects can start in October 2025. Then during the implementation that we expect to be, as mentioned, between 30 and 36 months, all the winning projects will keep us posted on the progress of their project implementation through deliverables, reports that are either or not linked to interim and final payments. The presentation of Alain that will follow mine will focus on the financial aspects. And so he will give you more detailed information in this sense. Next slide, please. Thank you. Yes, let's now see the different categories of applicants. Before starting, I would just like to remind you that before submitting your application, all beneficiaries, affiliated entities, and associated partners must be validated in the participant register. Because all participants in an application need their own PIC number already at the submission of the proposal. The PIC number stands for Participant Identification Code, and then my colleague from the Revalidation Services will give a presentation about this later. So what are the different categories of applicants? We have, first of all, the beneficiaries, so those who will sign the grant agreement and receive EU funding. Then we have the affiliated entities. Affiliated entities are those who have a link, which can either be legal or capital, with one of the beneficiaries. They do not sign the grant agreement, but they receive EU funding, and also they have to be registered and validated. Please, it's very important to take into account that affiliated entities do not count towards the minimum eligibility criteria of the consortium, which we talk about in a minute. So please make sure that even without them, your consortium is still eligible to apply. After the affiliated entities, we have associated partners. These are not formal recipients of EU funding, which means that they will bear their own costs during the action, but still they must be registered. And also the associated partners do not count towards the eligibility criteria of the consortium. Then we have subcontractors. Subcontracting normally should constitute a limited part of the tasks in your project. This must be performed by third parties, so not by one of the beneficiaries, not the affiliated entities. Note, please, that not all types of tasks can be subcontracted. For example, project management tasks cannot be subcontracted. And at the time of the application, you have to already detail which are the tasks that you are planning on subcontracting and justify your choice. Finally, we have the third parties providing in-kind contributions. These, again, are not formal recipients of EU funding, because, for example, an in-kind contribution could be providing either a venue for an event or infrastructure needed for performing certain tasks or activities during the action. Finally, proposals must be submitted by a consortium of applicants, and the consortium must appoint a coordinator, which will be the primary contact point for us during the grant preparation phase, but also during the project implementation. Next slide, please. Yes, here I have added just a few slides on what are the key elements of this call. So, like in the previous call, as Giovanni already mentioned, an important feature of this call is again the FSTP, or financial support to third parties. Since my colleague Alain will also explain more in detail about this aspect, I will just stress a couple of important points again. FSTP must be provided as a direct financial transaction between the EUROCLUSTER and the SMEs. This means that voucher schemes or services provided by the EUROCLUSTERs will not qualify as FSTP. Then, in the framework of this call, as mentioned, FSTP can only cover activities addressing the main objective. Also, please be reminded that the calls that EUROCLUSTERs will launch shall focus on engaging actors from regions with different levels of economic development, and also from regions different from the ones of the consortium's partners. The call text lists all the requirements that applicants have to fulfill when submitting the proposal regarding the description of the proposed FSTP scheme. So I invite you to carefully read the call text with regards to this very important aspect. Next slide, please. KPIs. Yes, Giovanni already mentioned that we have these key performance indicators. And here on my slides, as well as in the call text, you can find a complete list of all the mandatory ones. Mandatory ones means all proposals are required to present an outline of these KPIs as a minimum. And then, based on their specific work plan, they can include others that the consortia will decide upon. So this is not mandatory, of course, but it might be relevant for you to monitor the performance of your actions. I will not read them all. I think they are quite self-explanatory, but of course, you are more than welcome to ask questions if you are doubtful about these KPIs. The next slide is a continuation of the list of KPIs. So these are all the mandatory ones. And finally, we have the third slide on KPIs, okay, which are instead linked to the secondary supporting objectives. But as mentioned, you will find the complete list also in the call, where you also have a very nice overview table. So it might be easier for you to consult the context directly. Yes, let's now see, this is a graphic overview of the evaluation and award process. So all the steps that you see here presented will be carried out by EISMEA with the support of independent experts who will perform the evaluation of all the proposals that are declared eligible after the admissibility and eligibility checks. Here, there's also a reminder of our functional mailbox where you can send your questions in case you have any doubts. Next slide, please. Let's see more in detail now the first step of the evaluation procedure, so the admissibility check. As mentioned, we have a deadline on the 5th of February 2025 at 5 p.m. After the deadline, we will check all the proposals to see if they meet the admissibility requirements. The first important requirement is that you submit your proposal through the funding and tenders portal in an electronic format. This means that you cannot send us your application by email nor by post. Then, of course, you have to respect the deadline, which I already mentioned at least a couple of times, but I will once again. It's the 5th of February 2025 at 5 p.m. As mentioned, please don't wait until the last minute. As you know, also other applicants might have the same idea, and so the servers might be busy towards the deadline, and it would be really a pity if you miss the deadline because of a last minute technical problem. So submit in advance, please. Then applications must be readable, accessible, and printable. What does it mean? It means that you have to upload nearly all documents and forms in PDF. But we will talk about this in a minute, and I will also provide you later on with useful links to the guidance documents where you can find all the instruction on how to proceed with the submission of the forms and the annexes. Then applications have to be complete, which means all the forms that are listed here on the slide must be present and filled in properly. We will talk about all of these forms in the next slide, so I will just skip the description now. We can go to the next slide, please. Yes, let's see in detail the different forms and annexes to be filled in and submitted. We have Part A. Part A is an administrative form to be filled in online directly in the electronic submission tool. Part A contains general information about the consortium, the abstract of the proposal, the declarations on behalf of the partners in the consortium, and then, all the administrative data about the participating organizations, your name, your legal address, the contact details, and so on and so forth. And also, in Part A, you will have to fill in a summarized budget table. Then we have Part B of the proposal, which is the technical description. Please remember this part. You have a template that can be downloaded, of course, from the funding and tenders portal. It has a page limit, which is set at 50 pages. This means that if you go beyond these 50 pages, then the evaluators will not take into account any page exceeding the page limit. So please, when you draft your proposal, make sure that it respects this requirement, that all information you want to provide are included in these 50 pages. Also, when downloading the template, you will see it contains detailed instructions that must be followed and also meant to help you fill in properly this form. Then we have the detailed budget table. In here, please choose the right template. You have several ones on the funding and tenders portal. The right one to choose is the one that ends with the number 90, which is the co-funding rate. The detailed budget table, contrary to the other forms, can also be uploaded as an Excel file. In case you want to upload it as an Excel, then be aware that normal Excel files can simply be filled in, merged, and uploaded. While if you choose other Excel formats, they might require some further action. So I would recommend you to go for the easiest option. And then if you decide instead to upload it as a PDF, then please note you have to be very, very careful when you convert it from Excel to PDF, as you might lose data. It's a very complex table with lots of macro and formulas, so please be careful when working on it. And then it's important also to remember that when you fill in the budget tables, since you have one in part A, which is a summarized budget table, and then the detailed budget table that has been filled in separately, these two tables must be consistent one with the other, so that there are no discrepancies between the data that they contain. If by any chance any discrepancies are detected, then the table in part A will prevail. Then you will have also to provide a list of your previous projects during the last 4 years, and for this the template is available as a section in application form part B. And finally, very important, you have the so-called Annex 5, which is the consortium eligibility checklist. Important, this template is not on the funding and tenders portal because it's very specific to this call. So you will find it either on the EISMEA's page about the call that is linked here, or already here you have a direct link to download this template. Please don't forget Annex 5 because if you don't fill in and submit Annex 5, then your application will not be considered eligible. Next slide, please. Yes, this is just overview of what you will see in the submission system. When you have to upload your forms and annexes, you will get to this screen. And here I put some instructions or what goes where. And also, I don't see it here, but I think I had added, yes, a link to the online manual, but you will find it at the end of the presentation. On the online manual, on the funding and tenders portal, always, you will find really a complete overview, step by step, of the process. So if you have any issues during the submission, it will be very helpful, I think, for you to consult this manual. Next slide, please. Yes, coming to the eligibility requirements, we can distinguish those that apply to applicants and those that apply to the consortium. Of course, both have to be respected. Applicants must be legal entities established in an eligible country. Eligible countries are all EU member states and also countries who are participating in the single market program. You can check the complete list of the SMP associated countries at the link provided on this slide, and also, of course, in the call text. Then applicants can be or represent a cluster organization, a single market program cluster network, or other types of organizations that are supporting green and digital transitions and building EU resilience. In this sense, the cluster definition comes from the European Cluster Collaboration Platform and is also provided here as a reference. Next slide. Yes, now about the requirements for the consortium composition, I will start with the geographical representation. A consortium must be composed of at least 3 cluster organizations or cluster networks from at least 3 different EU member states. In this sense, we received questions in the past inquiring on the eligibility of cluster organizations from other countries, but which had members in the EU. Please note these do not count towards the eligibility of the cluster in the consortium composition, so please make sure that this minimum requirement is respected when forming your partnership. Then, at least half of the partners in each consortium must be registered or having submitted a registration on the ECCP before the submission deadline of this call. This is something we will check during the admissibility and eligibility checks. So make sure that you have fulfilled this obligation before the call deadline. As mentioned, it is sufficient that you have submitted a registration, not that you are fully registered. So please make sure at least to having submitted it. And finally, in order to be considered as eligible, the applicant consortium must include at least one partner established in a less advanced region of an EU member state. If you are doubtful about what is considered as a less advanced region, please note these are defined in the Cohesion Policy Regulation 2021-2027. And you can find a full overview of the EU less advanced regions per country by consulting the map that can be found at the link highlighted. Next slide, please. Yeah. Coming now to another type of check. This one will be performed only for successful proposals, and it's the financial capacity check. Alain will explain you everything about this. I will just briefly touch upon it. During the grant agreement preparation phase, we will assess the financial capacity of all the participants. And so basically we examine if participants are stable and have sufficient resources to implement the project they have proposed. To be noted that public bodies or entities that are receiving less than 60,000 euros will not go through this financial capacity check, but all the other applicants will. It is possible already for you to perform a self-check by following the link you see on this slide. Yeah, we can go to the next link, please. Then we have the operational capacity check and the exclusion check. These also are things that will be assessed already during the evaluation process. Specifically, the evaluators will analyze the operational capacity of all applicants in a consortium against their proposed work plan. This means that the participants need to have sufficient know-how, qualification, and resources that are needed to properly implement the project. Regarding exclusion, what we examine here is that if any applicants should be excluded from participating in an action for one of the reasons that are listed in the core text. You will see there is quite a long list of situations that might lead to the exclusion of an applicant in the core document. And they mainly mean either bankruptcy, fraud, tax avoidance, misbehavior, let's say in general. But you have a full list there, so be careful when choosing your partners. Next slide, please. Yes, the evaluation itself. It starts just after the admissibility and eligibility checks. So all the proposals that pass this step will move to the evaluation that, as I mentioned, will be performed by an evaluation committee assisted by independent external experts. The experts will evaluate each proposal against the evaluation award criteria. I will talk about the criteria on the next slide. At the end of the evaluation, we will create a ranking list of all proposals based on the scores that they obtained. And then, based on the available budget, some proposals will be retained for funding, whereas others that scored lower than these ones, but could have been awarded if there had been more budget available, will be put on a reserve list. And then, of course, we have all other proposals, so the ones that did not pass the evaluation threshold, and this one will be rejected. Once we finalize these lists, all applicants will be informed about the outcome of the evaluation, as mentioned, through the evaluation result letters. And we will immediately invite the successful proposals to start the preparation of the grant agreement. Please note, proposals that are on the reserve list will still have a chance at this stage. Invitation to preparation of the grant agreement is not yet a formal commitment for funding. So if for whatever reason we cannot finalize the grant agreement preparation with one of the successful proposals, then it means that another project from the reserve list could be funded instead. Next slide. About criteria and thresholds. The three main evaluation criteria, as usual, are relevance, quality, and impact. I will not go so much into detail regarding the criteria, as again, you have a list and they are quite self-explanatory, but I really invite you to carefully read this section on the call text, because these are the criteria against which your proposal will be assessed by the evaluators. Evaluators will have to go point by point, criterion per criterion, and analyze if you address each of the requirements listed here and how. So really take your time when you start drafting and designing your project, sit down with your project partners and really think how you can properly and convincingly address all of the criteria that are described here. Very briefly about the criteria, relevance that you see here, it's focusing on the clarity and the consistency of the project. So how you address the objectives and the priorities of the call, how you address the European transnational dimension, and obviously also the main focus of this call, so improving the resilience of the European supply and value chains will be subject to this, the evaluation under this criteria. Next slide, please. Yes, the quality criterion, as you see, is twofold, as there are two sub-criteria being evaluated. The project design and implementation, which is about technical quality, about the work plan, risk management, cost effectiveness, and so on. And then the project team and cooperation arrangements. This is very important. For example, when evaluators are analyzing the operational capacity of the consortium that we just talked about. So please address very well this part, as it will feed the assessment of the operational capacity. Next slide, please. The third criterion is impact. So under this criterion, the evaluators will examine what is the long-term impact of your proposal on the target group, on the SMEs that will benefit from the action, and also on the general public. Also, the dissemination plan of your project will be assessed under this criterion, and how sustainable the project will be after the EU funding ends. And also how realistic are the KPIs that you have proposed. About the scores, as you see, every criterion has a minimum pass score, and then there's an overall pass score. So this means if you don't reach the minimum score under one or more of the evaluation criteria, even if you scored higher under other evaluation criteria, unfortunately, we cannot retain your proposal for evaluation. I mean, for award. Sorry. Next slide, please. Yes, we are getting now to the end of my presentation. It was quite long, so I just summarized here a little bit the main elements that we have discussed beside the really administrative ones. We have the project budget, as we said, 2,625,000 euro max grant amount. Project length is between 30 and 36 months. The FSTP must address the main objective. It has to be at least 75%, and it must be directed to SMEs. And then you have the mandatory KPIs that have to be covered in their entirety. Next slide, please. Yes, I will conclude by providing some basic tips and tricks for drafting what will be considered as a good proposal. It can sound obvious, of course, but we still have to say, please read carefully the call document and also the question and answer section that you can find always on the call page on the funding and tenders portal. Please download the templates, read the instructions they contain. Don't forget the annexes. And on the funding and tenders portal, as I mentioned, there's also this online manual, which is very, very useful as it really contains clear and detailed instructions about all the steps of the submission process, but also if you're successful for the project implementation. Then when drafting your proposal, try to imagine you are an evaluator. So write it in a structured way, write it as you would like to read it. Take into account all of the aspects that we mentioned under the several evaluation criteria. Be focused, be specific, don't be vague, use quantification, be consistent, write in a reader-friendly manner, and don't just repeat what is written in the call text, because this will be immediately spotted, and of course it will not help. You have to really try and show how your proposal is special and different from the others, why it stands out. And again, don't forget annexes and don't wait until the last minute to submit. Next slide, please. Yes, talking about budget. When you build your budget forecast, be mindful that it has to reflect your deliverables and activities, and it has to be cost effective. Be very clear on how you plan to divide tasks, responsibilities, actions among the project partners. This is a key element, and not only during the evaluation of your proposals, but most importantly, during the implementation of your project, if your proposal is successful, because you will have to put everything in practice. So really think about this thoroughly. Also, to be reminded, during the grant agreement preparation, no major changes can be made, only minor technical modifications. So you have to be ambitious, but also realistic, because you will have to implement the project as it is described in your proposal. Next slide, please. Yes, this is my last slide, where you can find some useful links, I hope. First, I listed the links where you can find project partners. You can look for partners either through the Funding and Tenders portal, the Enterprise Europe Network database, but also the CCP. Please only include partners that gave their explicit consent. And also, you may want to consult other experienced applicants who maybe had successful applications and can give you their advice on how to draft a successful proposal, but also how to successfully implement and manage your project. If you have any problem, the first step is always to check the online manual, because as I mentioned, everything is explained very clearly there, step by step. So it might be faster and certainly more helpful than us in certain cases. And if you have any IT-related questions, like problems with your access, you forgot your password, you cannot do anything on the portal, then this is to be reported to the IT help desk. You have a direct link also to reach them here. For any other questions that are more content related, you can always send an email to us at the address indicated. This is our functional mailbox, and it's always monitored. Only please note, we will not answer any questions individually for transparency and equal treatment of all applicants. But then you will find all the replies to the questions we received on the question and answer section on the Funding and Tenders portal. Next, please. Okay, this was my presentation. I was quite long. It was a lot of information. But as I mentioned, you have both the recording and then you will also have the slides. And we are always here to answer your questions. Let's see, maybe now if we have already some.
Thank you, Arianna. Yes, we do have many. We're running a bit late. Maybe we'll take 2-3 questions now and then the remaining ones at the end of the morning. So the first question is one proposal beneficiary context. If we have if we have been affiliated entity of a cluster before in other calls, are both entities suitable to receive funding separately? So it must be said that the calls are individual process and separate and independent. So what was in the past will not absolutely affect the evaluation procedure now. So what we will check is if the same entity applies to more than one proposal, then in this case will be excluded. Otherwise, if they comply with the eligibility criteria, they will. So I think, I don't know if Arianna, you have something to add?
No, I mean, the way I interpret it is, okay, we have two entities that already participate in other calls as affiliated entities. What is not really clear to me is that they participated as affiliated entities for the same cluster or step. I mean, in any case, the answer you provided, I think, is correct and answers the question. So they can apply. The only rule is, as you mentioned already, there is this non-concurrent participation. So they can apply as partners in one proposal that ends.
Okay. We go to the second, and if our answer was not to the point, please write another question to clarify it. So, do you have any recommendation regarding the number of partners per project? Easy answer, we do not provide recommendations. There is no indication except the minimum requirements of the consortium eligibility. So there is a minimum of partners that need to be involved for the consortium to be eligible. Let's move to the next one. The FSTP cannot cover any more vouchers for internationalization, for example, participation to FAIR, as it's not directly focused towards the main objective. Arianna, do you want to
I think
answer?
we already received this question, and the answer will soon be also published on the Q&A section of the Funding and Tenders portal. The baseline is FSTP has to cover activities that are directly focused on the main objective, but this doesn't necessarily exclude other types of activities that could be interpreted differently. The important thing is you have to really demonstrate if your activity is addressing the main objective and how. So if a participation to a fair is instrumental for this innovation of product, innovation of process, that is, let's say, the core of the main objective, and so the focus of the FSTP, then it could be eligible. But it has to be really, really well substantiated. As I mentioned, we will publish a more detailed answer shortly, so you may refer to the Funding and Tenders portal to have more clarifications in this sense.
Thanks. And I would take the last question, then all the others will be moved to the final session. So which are the main criteria for being considered affiliated entity as beneficiary? Well, you are either affiliated entity or beneficiary, and it's not both. And
No,
Arianna, do you want to
exactly.
provide an answer?
There is a difference between an affiliated entity and a beneficiary, as we mentioned. Affiliated entities, I am now looking for the official, let's say, definition that you can always also find at page 39 of the call text. Affiliated entities are entities that are linked to a beneficiary, either with a capital or a legal link, and they participate in the action with similar rights and obligations, but do not sign the grant and therefore do not become beneficiaries themselves. They will get a part of the grant money, so they have to comply with all the conditions set by the call and be validated. This is what we can say. A beneficiary, let's say, is the one that is signing the grant agreement, so officially the recipients of EU funding. Affiliated entities depend on a beneficiary. I don't know if this clarified enough.
And maybe to also referring to a previous question, the affiliated entities must comply with the eligibility conditions, and they also comply with the non-concurrent submission. So they will be counted, affiliated entities and beneficiaries, both of them. They cannot submit more than one proposal. Okay, that's all for now, and I will give the floor now to Alain, our financial officer, who will go more into the financial provisions of the call. Alain, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Valentino. So my name is Alain Sconiens. I am financial officer in financial operational finance sector, C12 in EISMEA. So I will try to give you an overview of the different financial provision, starting with the financial documents for the submission. This was already a bit approached by Ariana in the previous presentation. So it's good to just to keep in mind that there will be you will have to fill in two forms. One is called the form part A, and the other one the form part B. Both the form part E will have to be manually filled online, and it is a summarized budget table. So it is really it will only take the major the major and the main figures of your project. Then the bigger table that will have to be filled in is the detailed budget table that you will have to access via the form part B. And this what is important to remember is that both forms have to match. So there must be no differences normally between both. If there are very light differences, the summarized budget table will take precedence on the detailed budget table. Next slide, please. The detailed budget table is the most important one, I would say, because it is really the one which will present the details of the budget. It consists of a global Excel sheet, which contains 5 different sheets. You will have only to submit 3 of them, which are the sheets 3, 4, and 5. The 2 first sheets are only general sheets, which will give you instructions in order to facilitate the introduction of the data, and also some instructions in order to add, for example, Word package in the files, also to make some refresh of the data, things like this, in order to have a correct table filled in. The main table is presented in the sheet 3. So it is this is really I would say the one that we will analyze, especially also at the gap stage, at the grant agreement preparation step. In this sheet you will have per participant to detail all the cost category and to give a detailed breakdown of the cost. So as you can see, it is a normal Excel sheet with blue cell and white cells. So the white cell will have to be filled in. You will have to introduce as much information as possible. If there are no costs in certain categories, no problem. You will leave the box empty. It's important to remember also that you have only to register eligible costs. We don't, of course, take care of costs which are not eligible. It's important to list each item only once, and also to list all the items possible. So if there are 10 persons, for example, working under and has to be who have to be declared under the personal cost, you have to list them all. So we need to have all the person declared in this table. We are talking here about budgets, so of course this is only an estimation, but try as much as possible to do it as more accurate as possible, because it will also be a very good tool to follow during the duration of the project. Next slide, please. The two other sheets are the sheet 4 and the sheet 5. The sheet 4 is a consolidated table per participant. This table you don't have to do anything, because it will just make a summary of the data that you will have introduced in the previous table, in the detailed budget table. So this is automatic. And then the last sheet, the sheet 5, is a consolidated table per project, where the coordinator will have to introduce manually all the consolidated figures per cost category and per work package, not per cost category, per work package and per participant. As already said, this consolidated table per project will have to match with the one which is presented in the form part A. So with the one which is also summarizing the consolidated data. Next slide, please. Let's go now more in detail about the different cost categories and income categories. From the perspective of costs, we will have the personnel cost, the subcontracting cost, the purchase cost. Under the purchase cost, there are three subdivisions. You will have the travel, accommodation, and subsistence costs, the equipment cost, and the other goods, the other cost for goods, works, and services. Then a fourth category is the one that we already have quite a lot talk about, is the financial support to third party. And last but not least, the indirect cost category. From the side of the income, yes, of course, there will be our contribution, the EU contribution, but there can also be revenues and contribution by third parties and on resources. Next slide, please. Let's talk a bit about the personal cost. Under personal cost, you can declare 4 different types of personnel. The first one, which is the most common one, are the employees. So who is eligible? But many people who have with the beneficiary an employment contract or equivalent, and people, of course, through these contracts who are assigned to the action. What are the costs eligible? Salaries, social security contribution, taxes, and other costs which are linked to the remuneration. Of course, you have to respect the national law of the employment contract, and all those costs, of course, have to be actually incurred. What we will ask you as base is to declare at the gap stage the monthly rates. Because we think, of course, it's more easy to take a base as base the salary of the person. But it's already important to mention at this level now that for the later reporting period, we will ask you to use daily rate. So a daily rate is quite easy to calculate. We consider in the institution that the maximum number of productive days that can be done during 1 year is 215. So the daily rate will have to be calculated by dividing the annual personal cost for the person in question by 250. Sorry, 250, not 250. A second category of person is a category of natural persons under direct contract and second persons. This person, either they are natural person with which are working under a direct contract, so not an employment contract. For example, civil persons who are working under their own name, freelance person, experts. And the second subcategory is called second person by a third party against payment. This is typical the case of an outsourcing company which will put at the disposal of the beneficiary some personnel through a direct contract. For those two categories, it is important to respect three conditions. The person will work under similar conditions as the employees of the beneficiary. So they will be supervised the same way. The presence at the office will be the same, especially now with the new rules about teleworking. The cost should not be significantly different from those for the personnel performing the same task. And generally, the work results will always belong to the beneficiary. Next slide, please. The last cost category is the category for SME owners and natural person without salary. So here we are talking about owner or co-owners of companies and who are beneficiary, of course, of the action. They have to declare on the portal that they satisfy to the SME status. And this person can then declare the cost, but not using actual cost, but mainly using unit cost. And the unit cost here that has to be used is the daily rate. So a daily rate will be calculated, which will depend also on the country where the beneficiary is located. For this, there is an explanation which is given in the Annex 2A to the grant agreement, where you can find for each country, country of the union, a correction coefficient that will have to be applied in order to calculate your daily rate. When this daily rate will be calculated, you will simply then budget the number of day equivalents that the person will work on the action. Next slide, please. So here is an example for the personal costs, which is taken, which is a print screen taken from the detailed budget table, where you can see that you have to declare the different categories of person working, so one per line. The type of rate here is the monthly rate. You will have to then to give the rate, but also then the number of months the person will be supposed to work on the action. Please also give always a few words about the description of the work of the person, just to have a general idea, and also to, as you can see here, we are asking those data per work package. Also to declare if the person is working in other work packages than the one currently described here. So we don't need to have, of course, 2 pages of description. Just please keep it concise, but it's always important that we have something commented at that stage. Next slide, please. Second main cost category, subcontracting. We have already a bit talked about it. It is important to remember for this cost category that the task, that what we cover here is more purchase of goods, work, or services, but which are directly related to specific task, part of the action. So this is important because, as we will see later, for the other direct cost, which are also cost covering goods, work, and services. This is this cost category is more linked to supporting tasks, not tasks directly linked to the action itself. Subcontractors are autonomous, so it means that they don't, of course, when they will work on the action, they will not be working directly under the supervision of the beneficiary, as opposed, for example, to in-house consultant. The subcontracting will be allowed under certain conditions. It has to cover very limited task of the actions. The subcontracting will have to be described in the Annex 1 of the grant agreement, and will have to be budgeted in the Annex 2, like the other cost, in fact. So the Annex 2 is to the grant agreement is the annex which is really giving the estimated budget for the grant. If the subcontracting costs are higher than 30%, which is quite a lot, in that case, it has to be very well justified in the application. The subcontracting costs have only to be declared as actual costs incurred. And important also to mention, they have to respect the best value for money or lowest price, and there should be no conflict of interest. So it means that generally you have to apply the internal procurement procedure of your company in order to allow subcontracting, to allow subcontracting. Sorry. Next slide, please. Just for your information, at the gap stage in the Annex 1 Part B of the grant agreement, there is also a request to give more details about the budgeted subcontracting, to give, if possible, already the name of the subcontractor, a description of what will be the subcontract, but also a justification why you cannot do those tasks by yourself. And also, if you will respect the best value for money, how will you intend to ensure this best value of money procedure? Next slide, please. Next cost category, we're talking about the purchase cost. As I have already told you, those costs are also covering service works and goods like subcontracting. But in this case, the contracts do not cover the implementation of the action task, but they are really necessary to implement the action task. So they are really necessary as a support to the action. There are three subcategories: the travel costs, the travel subsistence and accommodation allowances, the equipment cost category, and the cost of other goods and services. Next slide, please. Travel, accommodation, and subsistence cost category. They must be budgeted only for the personnel working on the action, and also for the person that participate in the action on an ad hoc basis, meaning that this can be also allowed for persons who are not staff persons of the beneficiary, if it is proven that their participation in the action is really needed and cannot be avoided because the intervention is important. What is mainly important for this cost category is that you will not use normally, we say, but you will mainly use unit costs. And those unit costs are managed by a commission decision, which was launched, if I may say, in 2021, and was amended two times. The last amendment to this decision was made on the 31st of July 2024, and it is this one that you will have to use, because it is based, in fact, on the opening date of the call, and your call was opened after this date, so we have to use this amendment decision to the commission, to the original commission decision. Sorry. So normally there are quite a lot of information, and so I can only advise you to consult carefully the commission decision, the original one and the amended one, in order to see really the cases which are possible. So you will receive later this presentation and the link. You will be able to use the link directly and to check those decisions. I can also tell you know that you can access on the net a flight and rail calculator, which will ease your work in order to determine the distance that will be taken for traveling. So it is important to see that that accommodation and subsistence rates are fixed per each country, which is quite evident since every country has its own level, its own price of life, if I may say. So it is varying from country to country, and it is also the reason why the Commission decision is amended from time to time in order to be always to respect the cost of life in the respective countries. What are the different unit costs that you will have to use? So the unit cost that you will have to use for the travel is the number of person traveling. So one person goes on travel, you declare 1 unit cost. What is important to keep in mind also is that unit costs for travels cover return journeys. So meaning starting leaving from your working place to the destination and coming back to your working place. So it's important to keep in mind that we are talking about return journeys. For the accommodation unit cost, there you will need, for that you will need to use the number of nights which are spent per person. So 2 nights, 2 unit cost, 3 nights, 3 unit cost. For the subsistence cost, you will need to use the unit cost based on the number of days which will be spent for the travel. So generally 1 day started will count as a full day. So this is also a question which come quite often. But I can only insist now that you read carefully at least once the Commission decision and its amendment. Of course, you can at any moment come back to us to also during the duration of the grant, because I know that sometimes there can be more tricky cases. Next slide, please. So here there is an example of through a print screen where you can see that there is a column there are columns foreseen for unit cost, but you can see also that there is still a column foreseen for actual cost. It can be in very rare cases that you will have to anyway declare actual cost when the cases are not foreseen by the Commission decision. For example, when you have to travel distance which are lower than 50 kilometers, very short distance, in that case, the Commission decision doesn't foresee a specific unit cost, and then for this kind of trip, you can still declare actual cost. But I must say no, except this example, in most of the cases, no, are really foreseen, and there were improvements also. Each amendment after each amendment, and more and more cases are now covered by the Commission decision. Next slide, please. Second cost categories under the other direct costs. It is the equipment cost category. For this, I will not go really into details. You can just, it's not very often used in this type of call, but you just have to know that anyway, if it is really needed. For example, some equipment like computers, if they are really needed for the good running of the action, they could be declared and under with a depreciation method, which is the one which has to be declared according to your own accounting rules. This could be considered as eligible, but to be honest, it's not so. It's quite rare in this kind of call. Next slide, please. So the last subcategory of other direct costs is the category other goods, works, and services. So here we are more talking about, again, costs which are covering activities or which are more supporting, so which are not directly action related, but which are really useful in order to accomplish the action. For example, the cost covering catering, covering the renting of meeting rooms, leaflets printing, consumables, supplies, dissemination, translations, publications. Also, in case it is required, the cost for covering the financial statement certificates, in case you are declaring EU requested contribution higher than 325,000 euro. Also, in more rare cases, if you are requested to use financial guarantees, the cost for this can be declared under this cost categories. The same as for subcontracting costs. Those costs have to respect the best value for money and or the lowest price, and they must be declared as actually incurred. Next slide, please. Now we arrive at this famous FSTP financial support to third parties. We have already quite a lot discussed about it. So you have to keep in mind, of course, that at least 75%, which is a quite big amount, I must say, of the maximum grant amount must be directed by the cluster as financial support to third parties, meaning the SMEs, via cascade funding by means of open calls fulfilling the conditions described in the call for proposal. Next, please. So there are quite a lot of conditions, but I must say regarding the financial point of view, you have to keep in mind that each third party cannot receive more than 60,000 euro as FSTP. As we already said, this amount will be 100% covered by the grant, by the EU. There can be some exceptions if it is proven and it is duly justified that for some specific reason it would be impossible to finalize some call because of the limit, this limiting threshold of 60,000 euros. But in that case, of course, it will have to be very duly justified in the application form. Important to keep in mind also that there must be a direct financial transaction between the beneficiaries of this goal, the cluster, and the third party. So I think as already also mentioned, there should not be any voucher schemes or service offered directly by the consortium. About the support itself, so it must be provided, so the financial support provided must be matched by the third party receiving the support with a certain percentage of other private financial sources. So as already discussed before, here the call is quite general, meaning that there is no maximum or there is no minimum percentage foreseen of private financial sources. This should be normally then accurately determined and decided at the level of the SME who will in fact put in place the call, and it will have to be also generally fixed at that moment, at the moment of the creation of the call. Next, please. The last cost category are the indirect costs. Those costs are, as it is indicated, are not directly linked to the action itself, so they are considered as overheads. So this cost will not be challenged. It means that they consist of a flat rate, which is a flat rate of 7%. And this percentage will be calculated on the sum, so on the total of the personnel cost, subcontracting, purchase cost, and other costs, so meaning the FSTP. So we will just simply automatically calculate 7% of all those costs. And this will, of course, allow you to cover costs like stationery, rent of the office, water, electricity, or things like this, which are also, of course, needed in order to have a fair grant activity. Next slide, please. The project can also give or lead to income. Those income can be generated by the action itself, such as direct revenue, like, for example, you will ask participants to a conference to pay a fee. You will sell some books which are related to the action, but all this income will have to be also declared. You can also receive financial contribution from third parties or in-kind contributions for free. This is allowed by the grant, but of course, all those contributions should only be declared. They cannot be considered as eligible costs that will be refunded by us. You will have also to determine the own resources that you will bring to the call. These own resources will generally be equal to 5% of the maximum grant amount, since to 10%, since more or less, because generally the call the grant will co-fund 90% of the cost category, except 100% for the FSTP cost category. Voila, next slide, please. So regarding the payment arrangements, what is important to keep in mind also is that after the signature and January inside the deadline of 30 days, you will receive a pre-financing amount, which is representing 50% of the maximum grant amount. You will be able it's not a possibility. You must declare that there will be a reporting period during the duration of the grant. For projects which have a duration of 36 months, there will be 2 interim reporting periods where you will have to submit detailed report about the breakdown of your cost. And for projects with a duration of less than 36 months, only 1 interim reporting period will be foreseen. So there will be 1 or 2 interim reporting periods, and the final, of course, at the end of the project, there will be a final report where you will have to again, of course, submit a report with the breakdown of cost, and where normally we will pay the balance of the costs which still need to be paid. If they can be, if normally it should be a payment, but no, if you declare less cost that the cost that you already received, there could be a recovery. This is of course the negative result of, but generally, don't be worrying too much. You will receive a final payment. To be noted also that all payments will be made to the coordinator, not to the different beneficiary. Voila, that's it from my side. I'm very happy now to reply to your question, if any. Thank you.
Thank you, Alain. Actually, as we are running a bit late and there are many questions we've received on financial issues, I would rather keep them on hold for a while and move to the next presentation. And then we will answer all questions in the last Q&A session. So our next speaker is Maria Domenica Cugnidoro. She is from the Central Validation Service of REA. Maria Domenica, the word is yours.
Hey, Valentino, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Maria Domenica Cugnidoro. Maria Domenica Cugnidoro from the Central Validation Service, that is in REA, the Research Executive Agency of the Commission. Today, I'm going to explain you how to register your organization in the participant register and obtain your PIC, the Participant Identification Code. Please bear in mind that this operation is necessary for your project participation. So today, first of all, we are going to discover the role of the Central Validation Service for your project participation. Then we will see how to register our organizations for the participation. Then we will see what happens next with the legal validation of your entity and the appointment of the LEAR, the legal entity appointed representative. Then the communication. We will talk briefly about how the communication is carried out with the Central Validation Service. And in the end of the presentation, I will give you some links to guidance documents that will be important for the registration of your entity, and for this document will be able to accompany you throughout all this operation. Next slide, please. So the role of the Central Validation Service for your project participation. What do we do? Our service, we verify the legal existence and legal status of the entities against a specific supporting document that we request to the applicant at the moment of the validation. We validate the appointment of the legal entity appointed representative, the LEAR, which is the official contact point for the Commission services. Then we validate legal changes of valid entities. We assess the universal takeover of valid entities, meaning the merger, and we have other tasks linked to the correct registration of every entity in the participant register. Next slide, please. Yes. So let's bear in mind that any organization that wants to participate to any EU-funded call has to be registered in the participant register, and so obtain this 9-digit code that is the PIC. I told you before, the participant identification code. So where do we start? The participant register is in the EU funding and tenders portal. So you need to click in this portal. Next slide, please. Yeah. First of all, you need to find whether your organization is already registered. So whether there is already a PIC number for your organization, because each entity can have only one PIC. So one entity, one PIC. In case your organization has already a PIC, you need to use this registered PIC. So there is a search area there in white where you can find a registered organization. You do first this research. In case your entity is not registered, then you go a little bit down. There is a blue button with register your organization. So once you see that your organization is not registered, you click there and you start with the registration, and this will start a workflow of several steps. Please, next slide. Okay, so you click there and some questions will be asked to you. And for this, you need to have attended specific documents. For example, you will be asked the VAT number, the registration number, so the identification of your entity, and other organization data, legal information, etc. And then also you will be asked to register yourself as an authorized user, and you can also nominate more than one people that can be your backup, that will be also self-registrant. Then once all this workflow is completed, then you will get your new participant identification code, the PIC, and this will be in a declared status. Declared because it's declared by you, but not yet checked by the Central Validation Service against the supporting document that we will ask you once we start the validation process of your PIC. Next slide, please. Okay, this is in this slide, you see the validation process overview. Okay, there are several steps, several stations. We saw together the red one, which is the registration of the entity, and it's done by you. Okay, we saw it already. The second station is the verification, which is done by the Central Validation Service with the collaboration of the applicant, okay, with you. So, and this verification is done based on certain legal documents that you will uploaded in the participant register when it will be requested to you. Then we have the appointment of the LEAR. the legal entity appointed the representative. And afterwards, there will be the financial capacity assessment if it's needed for the call. All of this process, you see, throughout this process, the communication is carried out exclusively via the participant register. No Outlook, no messages, it's just the participant register. Next slide, please. So we said the legal validation, the registration data that you included in the registration of your entity is verified by our service before the signature of the grant agreement or contract. The legal validation of a participant is done once when the entity has to sign the first contract, the first grant agreement, and then it can be reused for the future participation. So it's you create your PIC once, and then you can reuse it in the future. We are not going to ask you again to provide the same registration documents. The validation is always performed on the basis of supporting documents and in accordance to the EU financial regulation and the rules of validation. You have, if you want to have more information about it, you have a link in this slide and you will receive it later on, today or tomorrow. Next slide, please. So this is the list of legal validation documents that we request for your participation, and I will go just quickly through them. It's we ask for the legal entity form, which is a template that we have. We provide to the participant, and we need it to have it filled in and signed by the participant. Then we ask some recent documents like the VAT extract, the registration extract for the private entities, decision law for public, etc. Next slide, please. So we are now at the third station. For we talked about the validation of a PIC. We have now the LIAR. So once the PIC is valid, so it's not declared anymore, we need to validate the LIAR. And the validation of the LIAR is mandatory for each project participation. So without this, the LIAR, it's not possible, in fact, to sign the grant agreements. But it's important to say also that you can submit your application, your proposal without LIAR. At the moment of the proposal, you can do it also without LIAR, but then once it's the time to sign the contract, then the LIAR needs to be appointed. Next slide, please. So the LIAR is a person that is appointed by the legal representative of an entity. So, I mean, by the person that can engage the entity with their signature. For example, in case of a private entity, it could be the managing director. This information is checked by us with the supporting document, because we have some specific rules to follow. So we need to know that the person that appoints the legal representative has the power to do so. So then the LIAR is appointed. What are its roles and duties? The LIAR can notify the EU of changes in legal data and legal status. Then the LIAR can submit legal and financial documents if required. They manage access rights of the person in the organization, and very important, they nominate account administrators and individuals authorized to sign the contracts and grant agreements and the financial statement. And they, concerning this nominate account administrator, we suggest the LIAR to nominate more than one account administrators, because these are actually the backup of the LIAR. In case the LIAR is not available anymore or is on holiday, then there is always another person or more that can access to the PIC, so the account administrator. Next slide, please. So for the LEAR appointment, we need some specific documents like the LEAR appointment letter, the official proof of identity, and the proof of empowerment of the legal representative. And these documents have to be uploaded in the participant register. Next slide, please. The communication, as I told you before, the communication is exclusively done via the participant register. So this is the single channel of communication between the participant and the Commission services. Next slide, please. Sorry, the slide before. In fact, every time there is a communication, here from our services, you will receive in your email this notification and so then you will know that you will warn that you received information from us. Next slide, please. Okay, this is also a very important slide because an incident can happen. Okay, what happens if you lose access to a PIC? For this, we have distinguished two different scenarios. In case of a declared PIC, so when the PIC is not yet validated, the self-registrant, for example, left the organization and there are no backups, nobody can have access to this PIC, then unfortunately the entity needs to create a new PIC. We cannot use the same PIC that was created before. And it's important to inform us accordingly because we need to link then this old PIC to the new one. In case of a valid PIC, so for example, if the LEAR is not available, has left the organization, and there are no accounts administrators that are the backup of the LEAR, so nobody has access to the valid PIC, what happens? A new LEAR has to be appointed, okay? And in order to do so, there is the LEAR recovery procedure, and it's through the participant register. And you have the link here in this slide to get to the LEAR recovery procedure. Next slide. And so here in this slide, I would like to give you some links to very important documents that will be useful for you in the near future when you are going to register your organization. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any question, I'm here to reply.
Many thanks, Maria Domenica. So we'll open the floor to all questions. If there are questions specific to this last presentation, maybe we will move them on top, but it doesn't seem to be the case, not for now. So there are almost 100 questions and we have about 20 minutes. As I see that there are many questions later on similar on FSTP and the co-funding. Maybe before starting, I would like to repeat and reiterate some of the important elements of the FSTP. Partly we answered already. And be sure, in any case, maybe before going to the replies, be sure that if we do not manage to answer questions now, all questions will be answered in any case. They will be answered in written later on the funding and tender portal. So there will be no question remained unanswered. So be reassured about that. Now on FSTP, there are a few important things that probably, looking at the questions below, have not been well understood. The FSTP is a specific budget category that involves a direct payment from the beneficiary to the SME. So a voucher, when by vouchers, if by voucher you mean a piece of paper that allows an SME to go to a service provider and then for certain services, and then the beneficiary will pay directly the service provider, no, this is not possible under FSTP. So this will be eventually subcontracting. It is possible to do, but it will not be FSTP. So it's another budgetary category. So you need a financial direct transaction to the SME. There is a need for the SME to co-fund the received support. This there is no limit to this in the sense that you are free as beneficiary. You are free to design the call the way you wish, but in the application you will have to describe the approach you intend to take, and you will have to describe also. So therefore, the how you will intend to ensure that there is a certain co-funding, which percentage or with what characteristics, and the proposal as such will be evaluated by the evaluation committee on the basis of the work criteria that include also so also the approach you designed will be actually evaluated. So the evaluators will check if this is consistent, if it's suitable for reaching the objective, and what is the impact of this approach. So you can decide to give €1 or 60,000 euro or even more in just if you are able to justify to a specific SME, but you need to describe this and justify this approach in the proposal. The support to third parties can be with a lump sum, because I've seen also this question. So it's up to you to decide how you wish to provide support to third parties. You can provide support with by reimbursing actual costs or by a lump sum. In case you reimburse actual costs, obviously you will need to have evidence of the cost incurred by third parties, and you will pay on this basis, and you can in this way also ensure easily what is the contribution of the third party. But the fact that there is a certain amount of contribution by the third party doesn't mean that you cannot go for a lump sum. You can, for example, now this is, I have no direct answer to this type of questions, because this is really up to you to design the scheme. But obviously we can provide some hints to maybe to clarify something that maybe is not super clear for all of you. You can, for example, have an innovation call where you ask beneficiaries or applicants to provide an estimated budget, and on the basis of that budget, you establish a lump sum, which will ensure a certain co-funding. Then, in terms of when you will arrive to the reporting phase, I mean, the SME will have obviously to demonstrate somehow that they have co-funded this project. They can do this with their reporting before by providing some evidence of some costs they had, some invoices, with a declaration. So this is really up to you to design the scheme and to design the ways you will ensure that the SME is co-funding this FSTP. So I think I hope I was exhaustive and clear on this topic. So with this in mind, I hope we could skip many of the questions, but now I go to read them all. So FSTP, how will this be checked? I think I answered, but okay. How this will be checked by us is one thing. How this will be checked by you, that's another thing. By you, I think I already provided an answer. Easy is if you are checking the invoice, so it's you reimbursed based on actual costs. Otherwise, you will need to design a scheme for them to provide some evidence. What do we check? We do check that you actually incur the cost, and an auditor could check this as well. So and again, sorry, maybe I missed this, but we said it already before. We will reimburse 100% of the FSTP scheme. But 100% means that we reimburse 100% of the cost you had. Now, the cost you had, this is irrespective of the percentage of co-funding of the third parties. Then we move to the second question. on KPIs. Are all horizontal KPIs mandatory? Because some are not linked to the mandatory innovation activities. Please refer to the call. In the call, there is a list of mandatory KPIs. And obviously, I mean, if they're all mandatory, because it is clearly mentioned in the call, there are only 4 KPIs listed. They are numbered 12 to 16, 13 to 16, sorry, that are mandatory, but if applicable. So because they refer to secondary objectives which are not mandatory. So if you do have actions if you are addressing one specific secondary objective, then you will have to also consider the relevant KPIs as a mandatory one. So next question. Can FSTP envelope be split between partners, or should it be included to the coordinator's budget? There is no restrictions, so this is up to you to decide. What is the optimal consortium? I think we answered already before. We don't provide advice. There is a minimum requirements, and that's the only thing we can say. How will the funds be transferred to the coordinator? 50% as pre-financing, and the remaining amounts after each report. Will there be an advance for FSTP funds? I think the presentation of Alain was already exhaustive on this. I don't know if you so it's 50% pre-financing. There is no specific amount for FSTP. You can distribute the budget as you prefer to cover the initial activities. Anything else to add, Alain? No. So if projects are around 2.6 million, does it mean 1,090,000? Okay. I leave the math to you, but yes, you have to, the FSTP must be at least 75% of the grant. So it's important to note of the grant, not of the budget cost. So if the grant is 2,625,000, I think, which is the expected maximum, then it will be slightly less than 2 million euros as a minimum that needs to go to FSTP. And again, in parentheses, okay, okay, next question. Are clusters expected to check the private co-funding of SMEs? I think we answered already, so we'll move ahead. Are SMEs eligible if they bring their expertise of coordination of transnational cascade funding mechanism? I'm not sure if they will refer to eligible as consortium partner, or if you are talking of cascading goals. I think if you are referring eligible to the consortium or Eurocluster consortium, please refer to section 6, eligibility of applicants. The applicants must be either a cluster or cluster organization, network of clusters, or any organization that supports twin transitional resilience. So it's up to you to demonstrate if a specific entity is supporting twin transitional resilience. But if not, then you are not eligible. Can FSTP mechanism be supported, administrative terms of reference, financial technical monitoring by technical assistance subcontract, since it represents huge work? Subcontracting rules, I think, have been explained by Alain already. You cannot subcontract core tasks, but tasks that are of technical assistance and support can be subcontracted. But obviously the design of the call, the approach of the FSTP, these I would consider it a core task of the consortium. In the cascade funding mechanism, can Eurocluster projects provide financial support under the form of lump sum? I think I answered yes, it is possible by the grant agreement. Are there budget for secondary? So is there a budget for secondary objective? That's the budget of the call. I Not sure I understand the question right, but yes. Can FSTP beneficiary be not only SMEs, but a consortium of SMEs with academia, for example? So FSTP's beneficiaries, so the third parties, they must be SMEs, only SMEs. Now, some research center is an SME as well, but it must be an SME. So we can move on. And it can be a single beneficiary or a consortium. So this is up to you to design the call the way you wish. Must partnerships be cross-sectoral as indicated in page 7 or with an industrial ecosystem? We can justify this cross-sectoral aspect through digital green transition. Giovanni, but I think we answered already. I don't know. Giovanni, you have anything to add?
No, I think it's already. I'm not really fully sure I understood the question, but yeah, it's.
I think we had this before the sectorial cross-sectorial aspect, which is not
about the EUROCLUSTERs, yes.
a requirement.
No.
So it's up to you to decide where which sectors you want to focus. So we move to the next. Can FSTP mechanism be no, with this we already answered. Sorry, still duplicate. Mandatory KPIs from secondary objective are not really mandatory if you don't consider this objective in the project. Not sure I understand. Probably I replied already before. There are mandatory objectives, and mandatory objectives are mandatory, obviously. Then there are 4 that in the call are explicitly mentioned that are mandatory when relevant. So that's it. Related to previous question on cross-sectorial page 7 objective. Okay, this was answered. Where in the budget table do you need to fill in the other private financial resources? Alain, give it to you, even though I think your presentation was already clear on this.
It depends what you mean by private financial resources. Is it at the level of the SMEs or is it at the level of the beneficiaries? If it's at the level of the consortium, so I mean, you have to, there is, as I show you, there is under the income section, there is a field that where you can put your own resources. But no, if we are talking about the calls, which the result of the FSTP, this is something which then has to be determined by the call designer, if I may say. So, but if I may also add, it would be maybe a good example also to I will not say that our template is the best, of course, but the way we are requesting from the consortium to make to make the budget could be also a kind of example which could be used at the level of the SMEs launching calls also. It's a bit the same. It's a bit the same way of working.
Thanks, Alain. Previous call experience says 75% is going to SMEs. The consortium has very limited resources. The project requires huge administrative effort with low budget. Okay, this is not a question. It's a consideration. Thanks. How do you add partners in the detailed budget table? Do you duplicate the action grant budget table per participant? Alain, I would say.
In fact, in the Excel sheet, there is a button which is foreseen in, to add an additional subsheet for an additional partner. So it's quite simple. Just you will really see it when you will fill in the sheet. But all instructions are quite clear for that, and there are macros foreseen for adding new partners.
Thanks. And please vote the most relevant questions because we are finishing our time and we still have, I see, more than 70 questions. So can you inform about the envisaged timeline for interim report and connected interim payments? This will be decided in the grant phase, but as Alan said before, we will have 2 interim payments for projects of 36 months and 1 interim payment for those that are shorter. And the timeline obviously depends on objective reasons like the activities, the plan for FSTP that is actually impacting very heavily the cash flow. So FSTP budget could be managed by different project partners or should be the coordinator. We answered already, there is no restriction, up to you. Can a consortia from a previous EUROCLUSTER present a proposal? Yes, all projects are independent. All selections will be selection process will be independent for the previous one. Will you organize any matchmaking event related to the call? No. There is, although there is on the funding and tender portal a specific section to look for partners, also by specific calls. And there is also some useful partnering tool on the EN website, and on ECCP as well. You will find potential cluster partners. Are cluster from Ukraine eligible? Yes, Ukraine is associated to the SMP, so it is partners from Ukraine are eligible if they obviously comply with other requirements of other eligibility conditions. Can you provide further clarification on the requested matched funding? I think we answered already. Is it confirmed that the pre-financing will be 50%? This can create serious cash flow issues for cluster in the management of cascading funding. No, it is confirmed, yes. I mean, it is confirmed that it will be 50%. And there will be interim payments, and you will obviously adapt your plan, your course in such a way that your cash flow will not suffer from it. How many industrial ecosystems should we address in our projects? Giovanni, I think was answered already, no?
Yes, there is no limitation about industrial ecosystem, so it's up to the applicants to decide how many industrial ecosystem to touch, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. And the second one as well for you, Giovanni. Is there any restriction in the call to address defense and military sectors or dual use applications?
No, there is no restriction.
Okay. What are communication ambassadors? And who wishes to reply to this one? Arianna, you're muted, I think.
I don't think we mentioned communication ambassadors, but the way I interpret it, like we did in the previous EUROCLUSTERS wave, we will count on either one of the partners in the consortium or a specific person appointed to be, let's say, our communication correspondent. So to take care of all the communication actions related to the EUROCLUSTER and also with us as the granting authority. And I don't know if my interpretation is correct, but.
And otherwise, we will double check and answer in written. Regarding the KPIs, what do you consider business partnership or flagship support services? A business partnership is normally a negotiated agreement between SMEs. So it's normally enforceable agreement between SMEs. And I think you're referring to the KPI number 9 there. And if no, sorry, can we go back? No, the other one, the other part of the question was on the KPI 12, I think. So, yeah, the flagship support services. So these are the main services you provide to SMEs. So you will have to measure the you will have to measure the satisfaction rate of the SMEs you will support, for example, with your FSTP calls. Can clusters from developing countries like Turkey participate in the call as partners? Yes, Turkey is an eligible country, participates to SMP. What is the funding rate coverage for cluster consortium partners? What is the maximum amount of euros the consortium partner can receive? The rate we said already, there is a dual rate, so 90% co-funding rate for all categories except FSTP, which is funded at 100%. The maximum amount will depend on the budget eligible costs, and yeah, there is no easy calculation. I don't know if any other colleagues wants to complement, but we are over the time. I think we should stop here, and all the remaining questions will be answered in the coming days. I ask for your patience a bit, because there are many questions and it will take several days to answer in written, but rest assured once again that we will answer them all. And we will also clarify the ones we already answered, so all frequently asked questions will be answered. Now, going to the conclusions, you will find on screen the reference to the call. You have the link and also QR code. And again, as I said before, this recording and the PowerPoint will be available on the EISMEA webpage. Thank you for your attention, and good luck for your proposals. Bye.